So Arima is a very interesting character. He's been written in a way that makes him almost impossible to beat, but he also plays a very vital role in the integrity of the story to help build the foundation of the future to come, and obviously that relates surrounding Eto Yoshimura as well as Kaneki and his proposed future. There's so many things that I like about Arima and like the way Ishida used him in the story, even though he kind of was a cop-out to be the most powerful character, to kind of cap off the skill rating of how powerful a person could be, considering no one could go toe-to-toe with Arima to that extent and come out alive, technically. Every person that he faced, he would obliterate. It made him a very dangerous character. It made him have a lot of power, and when he sits on the side as a, top-of-the-line CCG investigator, you would think that Kaneki ultimately would be halted in his track. You think that all ghouls would be halted in their tracks. However, throughout the story, we find out that Arima has a lot more of a deeper persona than he actually gives off. Someone that cares about the future in its entirety and wants to see corruption and evil weeded out completely. This comes in the form of Eto Yoshimura, bringing to light something that is very dangerous for the world in terms of manipulation, controlling the public, controlling the CCG, and something that Arima himself was evidently maybe blind to. I think Eto and Arima's encounter sparked a different burden onto Arima, something that he would uphold till he found someone that was worthy to potentially weed out this manipulation and corruption throughout the world. And that would obviously be Kaneki. It starts off in a way where Arima's journey throughout this story is shy to us as readers. It's something that we evidently don't see all too much of until we kind of get the interaction between Kaneki and Arima, or at least I should say Hayase, and kind of how they revolve around each other. The contrast between them two, they're actually extremely similar, to the point where Hayase at that time considered Arima as a father figure, something that he realistically never had in his life, as well as even after that, Kaneki still represented those same feelings. He still felt the exact same way about Arima and what he'd done for him as Hayase. I put Arima down as a burdened king because that's kind of exactly what he is. He was someone that was kept in the dark for a very long time, who comes from a very prolific background of breeding, to become an ultimate fighter, to evidently being handed the One-Eyed King title, something that is so prolific in the story, something that holds a lot of value and weight to the ghoul world. A CCG investigator held that title for a very long time. From my eyes, a lot of people were very confused on why Eto would do this. A lot of people thought that Eto was the One-Eyed King for a very long time. That's not the case at all. I'm not too sure what went through Eto's mind, and I don't think it was ever realistically explained, but she's seen a future that was not meant for her. She's seen a future that she couldn't ultimately bring to light using her power alone. Somehow, some way, supposedly, she encountered a One-Eyed King in her lifetime. And this One-Eyed King was prolific, this One-Eyed King was powerful, and it was most likely the original One-Eyed King that was buried underground, known as the Naga Serpent. When you think about it like that, and the encounter that she potentially had with that king, to kind of learn all of this information that would be very difficult for her to kind of come to understand, or at least figure out herself, it slowly starts to make sense. The picture that she was building, the burden that someone would have to go through of holding the One-Eyed King title to ultimately weed out everything. She took this title, she ran with it, but she was never a One-Eyed King. It was more like she was holding onto it for someone else. She never embellished in it, she never used it, she gave it away, and she gave it to Arima. It's a very interesting choice for her to do that, considering I think at the time Eto was most likely considered the most powerful ghoul because she is the only natural One-Eyed ghoul that we know of, and then we found out, obviously the original One-Eyed King was one of them. It would make sense if they passed along like that, the original One-Eyed King having a very, very small encounter with Eto, passing over the king title, something he held on to, something that he wanted to revolutionize but couldn't. Her finding out about all this information surrounding the V organization, the Washu family and their history, and ultimately her coming to a conclusion that she wouldn't be powerful enough to do it. After that point, Eto and Arima went toe to toe and she lost. Considering she couldn't take down the biggest, baddest person that stood in their way of potentially upholding a revolution, she shifted that title. She changed directions. She sparked something in Arima and kind of awoken him to the realistic world and what was going on. Arima raveled in that burden, and he found a character that he could ultimately give that king title to when the time was right, and obviously that is Kaneki. The thing with Kaneki, however, is that he would not know that everything that was going on in the Hayase situation, everything that he was building up to be, was manipulated and kind of built upon to be a character that is open-minded to the future of ghouls, to the future of humans and the world in its entirety. It's a very big gamble what Arima and Eto took, but they done it in such a prolific and interesting way that helped kind of progress Kaneki throughout the story. Hayase was kind of like a child, you know, a small child learning about the world, learning about everything, and Arima was a person dotting over him, feeding him all of this information. It wasn't malicious in any nature, it was realistic, and this kind of helped Kaneki build the foundation of what he became after it, after he remembered everything that he lost regarding his memories, and the Hayase memories that he kept after it helped him become a character worthy of that One-Eyed King title. This was heavily impactful for one massive reason, and that is Arima's death. Arima's death helped certify everything that he was working towards. It helped certify and impact Kaneki to go above and beyond, that it's kind of just up to him at this point. There's no one more powerful than Arima, there's no one more powerful than Eto in terms of ghouls. Kaneki, you're the next in line. You're the person that I've trained, you're the person that I've shared all this knowledge with. Everything that I am, you are now. And that final fight between both of them was so symbolic, was so incredibly done, pushing both of them to their extreme limits. Well, not necessarily Arima, but definitely Kaneki. It was not a fight on who was more powerful. It was a showcase of how far Arima could push Kaneki to show him that he was ready to uphold the title of something much bigger than themselves. There's one thing that I kind of came up with that helped me really love the idea of Arima's death and his sacrifice to the world. Later on in the story, you find out that the V organization approached Arima and wanted to turn him into something that he wasn't, wanted to prolong his life and turn him into what they were themselves, these half-humans that have really short lifespans turned into ghouls and were more so corrupt in nature and very evil. Arima didn't want this. If anything, he was completely against this, and his aging was definitely coming into play. As he was losing his eyesight, he was slowing down, he was becoming lethargic, and everything was basically catching up on him. You know, his short lifespan was coming to an end. In my eyes, Arima never wanted to be used or manipulated or potentially controlled by the V organization. He never wanted any of that, and I feel like that also backed up his ideology of killing himself. That no one could use his body, that he couldn't be controlled or manipulated into being, you know, a very powerful character or weapon to kind of oppose the enemy forces with. By the end of the story, we found out that Kaiko, one of the leading members of V, probably the only member that we know of basically, could somewhat control ghouls. He could reanimate them, or he could do something that allowed him to control ghouls, maybe even half-humans. Could that ability, power, or technology, whatever it was, potentially go further? You could imagine if Kaiko, for example, were to reanimate Arima, or to bring him back from the dead, or to do something with him that turned him into a weapon, they would be unbeatable. No one would be able to stop Arima. Imagine if Arima was kind of in Eto's situation where she was turned and controlled into a big bad monster. No one's going to be able to beat that. I feel like this weighed Arima very heavily, and it was also kind of like a backing decision on why he chose to end himself. So he couldn't be used to that extent. His death obviously helped certify Kaneki's future and kind of forcing him down a sight of two different choices. You either sit on the crown and you rule, or you destroy absolutely everything. And truth be told, that's exactly how it went. It went both ways. Kaneki did destroy everything. He did destroy the throne, but he rebuilt it, and I think a lot of people forget that. Two choices that Arima kind of proposed to him, take one or the other, were both used and both completely rebuilt. The title evidently still exists of the One-Eyed King. Kaneki still sits upon the throne, but he also destroyed everything in its path. The throne is definitely not the original one that, you know, Arima left him with. It's something that Kaneki himself rebuilt. Arima's burden that weighed him down for a very long time, that pushed him to do things and create situations and scenarios that would help benefit the future, evidently has all kind of worked out. It's all manifested inside of Kaneki, and he has pushed for a future that is a lot brighter and better than I think anyone could have ever imagined. I think Arima would want this type of future, a future where everything was destroyed, you know, Kaneki turning into dragon, but then ultimately being rebuilt into something better. Something where humans and ghouls could coexist, something where corruption and manipulation and evil would ultimately be weeded out, whether it be by the humans, whether it be by the CCG, or whether it be by the ghouls and Kaneki. Everything that Arima worked for, everything that Arima stood for, everything that he was burdened with ultimately came true. All the hard work he put in paid off. His journey, his sacrifice was not in vain, and everything that he left to Kaneki to accomplish, to potentially achieve, has ultimately come to a conclusion. If Arima was still here to this day, I think it's safe to assume that this is the future that he envisioned. This is the future that he saw and was so scared of. Kaneki turning into dragon, V organization coming out to play, the CCG, Forza, everything just completely blowing up out of proportion, but ultimately being stomped in its tracks, and Kaneki coming out on top. I believe this is the future that he would have wanted. So that's basically it. Let me know how you feel about Arima. Do you love him? Do you hate him? Also, let me know who you would like for me to talk about next. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.